A Werewolf Shifter Romance by Cauliflower Campbell. Breanna Lockhart had always been good at staying unnoticed. To everyone else, she was just the shy girl who sat quietly at the back of the class, blending into the background and avoiding attention. But her silence wasn't weakness, it was control, because Breanna was hiding a dangerous secret beneath her calm exterior. She wasn't just an ordinary girl, she was a werewolf. The only place she ever felt truly free was in the ballet studio, where music replaced words and she could express herself through graceful dance. But fate changes everything the day her dance carries her into another pack's territory, where she unexpectedly meets Theo, the powerful alpha. And according to the unbreakable bond of their kind, he is her mate. Now the quiet girl who spent her life hiding must decide if she's ready to step out of the shadows and face the destiny waiting for her. Welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe for more. Chapter 1. Does she ever talk? I don't think she's said a single word since school started. The voice came from somewhere behind her, one of the girls seated in the row near the window. Her tone carried that familiar mix of curiosity and mockery Breanna knew too well. The whisper spread like smoke in a room, thin but suffocating, reaching every ear that wanted to hear it. Breanna sat at her usual corner desk, half hidden behind the raised lid of her laptop. The early afternoon light filtered through the classroom blinds, casting thin stripes across the floor, the desks, and her notebook. She had grown used to being invisible, though people still somehow noticed her. Maybe it was the way her sun-kissed skin caught the light, or maybe the single streak of red in her blonde hair that glowed like a flame against gold. Whatever it was, she couldn't fade completely, no matter how silent she stayed. I heard that she's even shy around her family, another voice chimed in, and soft laughter followed. Breanna's shoulders stiffened, but she didn't turn. She'd learned that acknowledging whispers only fed them, so she stared at her notebook instead, at the half-finished sketch of a ballerina poised on tiptoe, her body bent in an elegant arc. It was just like high school all over again. Back then, silence had been her armor. Now, even though she was 19 and in college, that armor still clung to her. People still called her weird, timid, strange. None of them knew the truth. The first rule of being a werewolf was simple: never let humans know you exist among them. And so Breanna Lockhart kept quiet. Her silence wasn't just shyness, it was survival. Humans thought monsters lived only in fairy tales, and she intended to keep it that way. You know they won't stop talking like that until you open up, a voice purred softly inside her mind. It was Evie, her wolf, the one presence she could never hide from. Breanna didn't respond. She didn't need to. Instead, she slipped her earbuds in and let music flood her thoughts. The soft piano notes of "As Long as You're Mine" filled her head, a song that always made her chest tighten and her pulse slow. It was her favorite, partly because she and her dance partner had been working on a duet to it. Breanna was a ballerina. Dancing was the one time she felt truly alive, not hiding, not pretending, not fearing. From the moment her feet first touched the smooth wooden floor of a studio, she'd learned to see the world in 8 counts. Music and movement had become her language long before words ever did. As she listened now, she could almost feel it, the rhythm of her heartbeat sinking to the melody, the tension of a dancer's body arching with emotion. She imagined herself and her partner Adam gliding across the stage, his hands steady at her waist, their steps mirrored as if guided by the same pulse. Her lips parted slightly, lost in the rhythm. And then Evie growled. "Mate wouldn't be happy with you thinking of another man's hands on you." Breanna sighed softly, a hint of exasperation flickering in her eyes. "Really, Evie?" she murmured under her breath. Adam was the alpha's son. She was the beta's daughter. Their partnership was purely professional, a bond built on years of rehearsals, not romance. She'd known him her entire life. They both understood that when they eventually found their destined mates, their partnership on the dance floor would end. "How many times do I have to tell you, Evie?" she whispered quietly. "We don't have a mate." "Yes, we do, Breanna," Evie huffed. "And we would have found him if you actually left the house more than for school and dance practice." The sting of that truth settled heavy in her chest. Most wolves found their mates by 18. Breanna hadn't. "I do go out more than that," she muttered. Evie gave a short, unimpressed snort. "New moons don't count, Breanna." Brianna's gaze dropped to her desk. The new moon, the one time she allowed herself to shift freely under darkness that drew no attention. She preferred it that way. It was private, quiet, like her. Her shyness wasn't limited to the human world. Even among her pack, Breanna was withdrawn. When meetings were held at her home, her father's house, the Beta's residence, she would stay upstairs, listening faintly to the laughter and debates drifting up from the main room. Her father would call for her to join, reminding her that one day she might need to take his place, but the thought of being watched, of being heard, made her chest tighten. She would always whisper the same promise to herself, next time. But the next time never came. Her younger brother, 2 years her junior, often filled the role in her absence. He was sociable, easygoing, and confident, the kind of wolf the pack could see leading one day. Yet, oddly, the alpha family always seemed to prefer Breanna. Maybe it was her calm nature, or maybe it was Adam's quiet loyalty to her. They had grown up side by side, his bright confidence complementing her quiet steadiness. Whatever the reason, she couldn't see what they saw in her. Later that day, Breanna sat alone in the campus library, her laptop closed and a sketchbook spread open in front of her. Her major was English, but she'd always taken comfort in art classes. Drawing helped her process emotions she couldn't say out loud. On the paper before her was another ballerina, one twirling through a forest clearing, her hair flowing like sunlight. Behind her, half shrouded in shadow, stood a wolf, large, graceful, its fur the same blonde as Breanna's hair, with a single red streak slashing through its left eye. Her wolf. But there was something different about this drawing. The wolf's eyes glowed a golden yellow, vibrant and alive. Breanna's own eyes were just a dull brown. No matter how many times she drew herself this way, it never felt right. Wolves were supposed to be radiant, regal. Hers felt muted, ugly unless dancing. The bell rang, sharp and distant. Students began to shuffle out, their chatter filling the space. Breanna didn't move. Her earbuds still played faintly, the song looping again. She stayed seated until the room emptied completely. Only then did she rise, gather her things, and head toward the parking lot. Her car was parked on the far side of campus, under the shade of a large oak that had already started shedding its leaves. The wind was cold, the kind that whispered promises of early winter. Breanna walked quickly, her bag slung over her shoulder, her hair catching the dying light. Just as she reached her car, a voice brushed through her mind, not spoken aloud, but felt. "Just be aware," came her father's voice through the mind link, calm but firm. "There's a meeting going on right now." Breanna froze. Her stomach dropped. Of course there was. And of course there would be no way out of it this time. She sat inside the car for a moment, resting her forehead against the steering wheel. Through the windshield, the campus slowly emptied, students driving off in pairs and groups. She envied their easy laughter, the kind that didn't carry secrets beneath it. For her, there was no escaping the dual life she lived. To the world, she was just a quiet girl who never spoke. But within her, a wolf waited, wild, restless, watching. "You can't keep hiding forever," Evie said softly. "I'm not hiding," Breanna whispered. "You are," came the reply. "And sooner or later, someone's going to see you for what you are. Then what?" Breanna didn't answer. Instead, she started the engine and drove toward the long, winding road that led out of town, toward Silverfang, the private stretch of land her pack owned deep in the forest. The drive there was always strangely calming. The road curved through the pines, sunlight flashing in broken patterns across her windshield. The smell of earth and damp leaves grew stronger the closer she got to home. By the time she pulled into the driveway of her family's house, a sprawling cabin surrounded by towering trees, the sound of distant voices reached her ears. Male laughter, low murmurs. The pack meeting had already begun. She could sense it, the presence of wolves. Their scents lingered in the air, familiar yet commanding. Her father's, steady and earthy. The alphas, strong and dominant. And among them, a scent that always made her pulse quicken slightly. Adam's. Evie stirred at the recognition, her tail flicking in satisfaction. He's here. Of course he is, Breanna murmured. He's the alpha's son. Still, Evie teased, you think about him too much. Breanna ignored that. She grabbed her bag and stepped out, the evening air brushing her face. The moment her feet touched the gravel, she could hear them inside. Laughter, footsteps, voices rising and falling in conversation. Her father appeared in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, with streaks of gray in his beard. His expression softened when he saw her. Bree, he said quietly, you're home. She nodded. You said there's a meeting? He hesitated, then smiled faintly. Yes, you should come down for a bit. She almost protested. Almost. But the warmth in his eyes made it hard to refuse. So she followed him inside. Chapter 2. Of course, the minute Breanna walked in, all eyes turned to her. It was like the air itself shifted, a collective hush rippling across the table as heads lifted, voices dimmed, and attention locked on the one person who hated being seen. Her pulse quickened as she stood framed by the doorway, soft lamplight spilling across her face. The house was alive with the low hum of voices, male voices, deep and confident, the kind that carried power. The scent of pine wood smoke and roasted venison hung thick in the air, mingling with the faint trace of cologne and wolf musk. The only way in or out of this house, besides the windows, was the door leading straight through the kitchen, and tonight, Breanna didn't dare crawl out a window like she usually might. Not when Alpha Jacobson himself was here. Every instinct in her screamed to vanish, but she couldn't. If she ever hoped to take her father's place as Beta, she had to show maturity, confidence, presence, even if it terrified her. The Alpha sat at the head of the long wooden table, his imposing figure wrapped in a black shirt that stretched across broad shoulders. His silver-gray hair caught the light, and his eyes gleamed with authority that needed no announcement. "Ah, Breanna," he said, his tone carrying warmth beneath the command. "So nice of you to join us." Breanna managed a small, polite smile. Her palms were damp against her skirt. "Thank you, Alpha Jacobson." Her voice, though soft and sweet, was steady, the kind of voice that made people listen without realizing why. "Please, come join us," her father said from across the table, motioning toward the empty seat beside him. She obeyed quietly, every step measured. The wooden floor creaked faintly beneath her flats as she crossed the room, conscious of the way eyes followed her. The table was full, alphas and their sons, betas and future betas. A ripple of dominant energy buzzed faintly through the air. She could feel it pressing against her skin like static. And though she held her chin high, she couldn't help but notice she was the only girl at the table. Her pack was unique that way. While alpha bloodlines always passed through sons, a tradition older than the town itself, beta positions could belong to either gender. If the firstborn was female, she had the right to train as beta. But more often than not, girls found their mates in other packs and left before ever claiming the rank. So here she sat, a rare sight, the beta's daughter, 20 and unmated, surrounded by powerful men who smelled of cedar, dominance, and expectation. "Will Alpha Michaels be joining us?" she asked after a moment, her curiosity breaking through the tension. She had never met Theo Michaels in person, but his name carried a kind of myth. The Alpha of the Snow Moon Pack, known as both fierce and mysterious. Whispers said he was the strongest alpha in generations, powerful enough to silence a room just by walking into it. At only 22, he had already united several smaller packs under his influence, earning both respect and wariness. "No," Alpha Jacobson said. "I am meeting with him tomorrow." Breanna nodded quietly, though her mind drifted. She took her seat beside her father, folding her hands neatly on her lap, and tried to focus on the discussion. But instead, her thoughts began to dance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The rhythm played silently in her head, like a heartbeat. Pirouettes, coupe turns, fouettes, ballottes. In her mind, the wooden floor beneath her feet wasn't from the Beta's dining room. It was the studio's smooth, polished surface. Music filled the space, her body moved freely. The graceful spin, the stretch of her arms, the precision of a pointed toe. She could almost feel it. Then a sharp voice echoed through her mind. "Breanna, stop. Now is not the time to be thinking about that." Her father's mind link cut clean through her daydream. Her cheeks flushed in quiet embarrassment. He always knew when her mind drifted to dance during meetings. It was as though he could sense every flutter of distraction, every echo of music that slipped into her thoughts. The alphas and betas continued talking, their voices blending in a low, serious hum. The conversation had shifted to a more urgent tone now. "The rogue problem in our area is escalating," Alpha Jacobson said, his voice grave. 2 patrols reported signs of trespassers along the border near the river. "We can't ignore it anymore." Breanna listened silently, her gaze lowering. Rogues, wolves without packs, wild and desperate, were a danger to everyone. But this region had been peaceful for years. If rogues were returning, something was wrong. Her father cleared his throat. "We should start training at 10 if it's becoming a problem." Breanna's eyes flicked toward him. "But that's way before the shifting age," she murmured, unable to help herself. A few heads turned toward her, surprised she'd spoken. She wasn't wrong, though. Wolves usually experienced their first shift on the new moon after their 14th birthday. Alphas and betas shifted earlier, their stronger bloodlines pushing the transformation sooner. Smaller wolves or those without rank often shifted later. Breanna herself had shifted for the first time at 12. She still remembered that night, the terror, the pain, the strange sense of liberation that followed. Her father had been there with her through every second, guiding her through the agony until her body stopped trembling and fur replaced skin. Her mother hadn't been there. She had died when Breanna was 8, leaving behind only memories and the scent of lavender and rain. From then on, Breanna had taken care of her younger brother, while her father managed the beta's duties. When the new moons came, she would shift in solitude, always in the same secret place. A waterfall hidden deep in neutral territory. It was a place of peace and silence, where the moonlight poured like silver through the trees, and the water's roar drowned every fear she carried. Her mother had shown her that place before she died. It had become her sanctuary, her only safe space to exist freely as both girl and wolf. Evie, her wolf, stirred in her mind now, voice filled with smug amusement. "Yes, because we all know if your room was big enough to shift in, you'd just stay there." Breanna rolled her eyes inwardly. "Shut up, Evie." A few seconds later, the meeting dissolved. Chairs scraped. Men stood and exchanged firm handshakes, murmuring plans and schedules. She blinked, realizing she hadn't caught the final decision. Her attention lost again somewhere between memories and music. "Breanna," her father's voice cut through the noise, gentle but firm. She turned. "When Alpha Michaels comes tomorrow," he said, "I want you there." Her breath caught. "Why would you want me there?" she asked, brows furrowing. Why me, of all people, Father? He sighed, his shoulders heavy with thought. We decided someone should visit their pack to see if they can be trusted, instead of having Alpha Jacobson meet him personally. Breanna's stomach twisted. The Snow Moon Pack had a dark reputation. Even among wolves, their name carried a chill. Rumors spoke of a shack deep in the woods where enemies were taken, tortured, broken. Entire packs had vanished overnight, their territories absorbed into Snow Moon's shadow. Whether those tales were true or exaggerated, no one could say. But the fear was real. Why me, Dad? She asked quietly. Why not Adam? Her father sat down heavily on the couch, gesturing for her to join him. He looked tired, the kind of tired that came from too many years of leadership and loss. I've put this off long enough, he said softly. You need to get out of your comfort zone if you want to be Beta. Her heart clenched. Evie's voice rose sharply, indignant. No, don't be Beta. Mate won't be in this pack. Breanna's lips pressed into a line. Why did I have to get the wolf that wouldn't shut up? She muttered under her breath. Her father looked up at her questioningly, but she just sighed. Fine, I'll go. She didn't wait for his response. Her room was quiet, small, and simple. Walls painted a muted gray, the faint smell of books and lavender lingering in the air. A futon rested against one wall, shelves of novels and sketchbooks lining the others. Above her desk, a long wooden shelf held her treasures: dance shoes, ballet slippers worn thin from years of practice, satin point shoes, their ribbons neatly tied. Each pair held a story: rehearsals, blisters, victories. Dancing was her peace. As she set her bag down, her phone buzzed. A message from Adam. Sorry, I can't make it today. Dad has my day packed with alpha stuff. Her thumbs moved quickly. It's fine, Adam. No need to explain more. He'd understand. He always did. She tossed the phone onto her bed, exhaled slowly, and went to her closet. She changed into a gray tank top, black leggings, and a black half-cardigan dancer shirt layered over it. The outfit hugged her lithe frame comfortably, perfect for movement. Her father had bought her a special pair of shoes, outdoor dance slippers, designed to mimic point shoes, but tougher, with soles built for the earth. She slipped them on, tied her hair into a bun, and stared at herself briefly in the mirror. Her reflection looked calm, composed. But her eyes betrayed her. They held a stormlight. Downstairs, she grabbed a water bottle from the counter and headed out without a word. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and dew. As her car pulled away from the driveway, the sound of the engine faded into the whisper of trees. She was heading to the only place that ever made sense: the woods, and the waterfall that called to her every new moon. There, no one expected her to speak. No one watched. No one whispered. There, Breanna Lockhart could finally breathe. Chapter 3. The woods seemed to come alive when Breanna entered them. They were her sanctuary, the one place where the noise of the pack, the weight of expectations, and the restless voice of her wolf faded into something softer. The towering trees whispered in the breeze, their leaves dancing above her like a living canopy. A faint mist hugged the ground, curling around her feet as if the forest itself welcomed her back. She knelt near a fallen log, the cool earth pressing through the fabric of her leggings, and began lacing up her shoes. The special shoes her father had bought her, built like point shoes but strong enough to survive the forest floor. As her fingers tightened the ribbons, her mind wandered, searching for a song. Her phone's playlist was her treasure chest, a collection of songs that had guided her through years of dance, pain, and growth. Every song held a memory, every beat a story only her body could tell. She scrolled through the playlist with a thoughtful hum. There were classical pieces she'd danced to since she was little, but today, she wanted something faster, something with fire. something that could drown out the noise in her mind, her father's orders, the talk of rogues, her wolf's impatient growl about finding their mate. After a few moments, her thumb stopped. Touch the sky, from Brave. Perfect, freeing, defiant. She slipped her phone into the armband, adjusted her earbuds, and pressed play. The first note burst through the still air, bright, rhythmic, alive. Instantly, her wolf retreated, grumbling somewhere deep inside her chest as the dancer took over. Her body began to move before she even thought about it. A breath in, and she was gliding. A breath out, and her arms sliced through the air with precision and grace. Her movements blended seamlessly into the rhythm of the forest. Feet light against the soil, legs strong, spine fluid. The forest floor was uneven, but she made it her stage. Every turn, every leap seemed effortless. A branch brushed past her shoulder. She didn't flinch. Her senses sharpened, tracking the music more than her surroundings. If anyone had seen her then, they might have thought she was enchanted, a spirit of the woods, untouched by mortal hesitation. The music built, and so did she. She spun faster, leaped higher. Her breaths turned into quiet gasps that matched the beat. The world around her blurred, trees, light, and sound melting into one single euphoric rhythm. Her wolf huffed from the back of her mind. You dance too much. You push me away. Breanna ignored her. She needed this. Needed the freedom of losing herself in something that wasn't expectation or duty. The song carried her deeper into the forest. Her leaps became wider, her spins sharper. The dancer and the wolf, the girl and the beast, all pieces of her pulled tight by the music's invisible thread. Then, the scent came. It hit her mid-leap, soft at first, like a tease, before it deepened and filled her lungs. Sweet honey, warm spice, a faint trace of rose and coffee. It was intoxicating. Her body froze mid-spin, her chest expanding as she inhaled again. The scent grew stronger, wrapping around her, pulling her in. Her eyes fluttered closed. For a moment, she let it consume her. The scent blended with the song, and something inside her cracked open, something primal, ancient. Her body began to move again, but now, it wasn't just the music that guided her. The scent did. Unknowingly, her feet followed it, light as whispers on the leaves. Her movements grew softer, dreamier, as if the forest had changed its rhythm just for her. She felt the wind brush against her skin, the trees shift around her, and for a second, it felt like she truly could touch the sky. When the song neared its end, she gathered her breath for one last movement, a perfect sequence she'd practiced 1,000 times. A graceful calypso into a pirouette. Her body spun like a ribbon caught in a breeze, ending with her hand outstretched toward the last fading note. And then, a blur of movement, a sudden rush of air. Before she could even process it, a pair of strong hands gripped her shoulders and slammed her back against a tree trunk. Bark scraped her skin. The earbuds were torn from her ears. A deep, possessive growl filled the air. Mine. The single word rumbled through the quiet like thunder. Her heart hammered, her breath caught in her throat. The world around her snapped into focus, and standing before her was a man who looked like he'd been carved by the forest itself. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his sun-kissed skin glowing even under the filtered light. His dark brown hair fell just below his ears, slightly tousled, the shorter sides damp with sweat. His chocolate brown eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that rooted her to the spot. His chest rose and fell with restrained power, and the scent, that scent, was rolling off him in waves. Her pulse quickened. His scent filled her lungs until her thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. A tattoo peeked from his right shoulder, a pair of angel wings, bold and intricate against his skin. She didn't need to be told who he was. Her instincts screamed it before her mind caught up. Mate. Panic slammed into her chest. Before the shock could turn into something else, something dangerous, something electric, she twisted out of his grip, adrenaline flooding her veins. Her shoes barely made a sound as she sprinted through the forest, branches whipping at her arms, heart pounding wildly in her chest. Behind her, she thought she heard another growl, low, frustrated, almost wounded. But she didn't stop. By the time she reached her car, her hands were trembling so badly she almost dropped her keys. She threw herself into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and started the engine without even buckling her seatbelt. The tires screeched as she sped down the dirt path, the forest fading behind her. The world was a blur. The scent clung to her even as she drove, a ghost in her lungs, a memory that wouldn't fade. By the time she pulled into her driveway, the sky had turned indigo. Night had fallen, and the house lights glowed softly through the windows. Her father was waiting in the living room, his expression sharp with concern. "Breanna," he called as soon as she stepped through the door. "Where have you been? I've been worried sick." She didn't answer. She brushed past him and her brother, her pace quick and unsteady, and disappeared down the hallway. The moment her bedroom door closed, she locked it and slid down against it, her breathing shallow. Her wolf's voice came again, soft but insistent. "Why did you run from mate? We want mate." "Evie, please, not now." Her voice broke. She pressed her hands to her face, shaking. The man she'd seen, that beautiful, wild, dangerous man, was her mate? It didn't make sense. Why would fate, or the moon, or whatever cruel force decided these things, choose someone like him for her? Someone strong, perfect, probably proud. And her? She was ordinary. A dancer, yes, but quiet, soft. Nothing like what a powerful alpha would want. Tears stung her eyes. Her chest ached as the thought hit her. He'll reject me. Her wolf whimpered in her mind, a sound full of heartbreak. The night dragged on endlessly. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. The way his eyes had burned into hers, the feel of his hands on her shoulders, the way that single word had vibrated through her bones. Mine. Sleep refused to come. She tossed and turned, the sheets tangling around her legs, her body restless. When she finally drifted off, the alarm on her phone cut through the silence like a cruel reminder of reality. 5 a.m. By 8, she was up, packing for her trip to Alpha Michael's territory. Her father had been clear. She was to accompany the visiting Alpha, observe, and represent their pack. But her stomach twisted as she thought of it. The name Theo Michaels had already been whispered through every pack meeting, every gathering. Strong. Young. Ruthless when needed. A born leader. And now she couldn't shake the truth that gnawed at her. The man who had claimed her in the forest was him. She shook the thought away and moved to the mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, pale skin, tired eyes, and hair usually tied up in a dancer's bun. Not today. She had to look presentable, composed. The curling iron hummed softly as she worked soft curls into her blonde hair. When she was done, she slipped into a white flowy dress with thin straps, simple, elegant, ending just below her knees. She applied a touch of makeup, just enough to soften her exhaustion. Foundation, eyeliner, mascara, a hint of blush. Then she clasped the necklace around her neck. A thin silver chain with a round pendant her mother had given her. It always rested against her heart, a quiet reminder of love and loss. When she finally heard 2 male voices downstairs, she knew her time had come. She took one last look in the mirror, whispering to herself, "You can do this." The hardest part wasn't the journey she'd have to take. It was knowing that for 3 days she wouldn't be able to dance. No release, no escape. Just duty. Her heels clicked softly against the wooden stairs as she descended. Her father stood near the living room window, talking to a tall man whose back was turned. His tone was light, but she could hear the undercurrent of respect. "This is my daughter Breanna," her father said. "She's the one we decided to accompany you." The man turned, and the world stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. The same tattoo, angel wings, black ink over sun-warmed skin. The same eyes, rich brown, fierce and knowing. The same scent, honey, spice, and something that felt like home. Theo Michaels, her mate. Her lips parted in shock as the truth struck her like lightning. Theo Michaels is my mate. And he was standing right in front of her. Chapter 4. The moment Theo smiled, Breanna felt her entire body betray her. Heat climbed up her neck and spread across her cheeks like wildfire. It was ridiculous how easily his smile undid her. Soft, teasing, yet carrying that unmistakable confidence only an alpha could wear. She quickly looked away, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her dress as she tried to hide her blush. "It's nice to meet you, Alpha Michaels," she whispered, her voice barely audible but sweet like spun sugar. Theo's laugh came, low and warm, and it melted through her nerves like butter. The sound of it was musical, disarming, almost sinful. To her, it was like hearing the melody of her favorite song for the first time. Unexpected, beautiful, and impossible to forget. "Your daughter is a shy one, isn't she, Beta Mason?" Theo said with an amused grin, glancing at her father as if they shared a secret joke. Her father chuckled, his tone light. "Yes, mostly around strangers, though." Breanna felt his words dig in somewhere tender. She wished he hadn't said it, but Theo only smiled wider, a knowing smirk tugging at his lips, one that made her heartbeat jump to an unsteady rhythm. "Well," Theo said, his eyes glinting with something sharp and playful, "I should hope she wouldn't be shy around her mate." The air in the room shifted. Breanna froze. Every muscle in her body tensed, her breath trapped in her throat. She could feel her wolf stir instantly, tail wagging with delight. But outwardly, she kept still, eyes trained on the floor as if looking anywhere else would give her away. Her father, blissfully unaware, laughed lightly. "When she does find her mate, I'd hope she doesn't stay shy." Theo's gaze didn't waver. His smirk deepened ever so slightly. If only Beta Mason knew. Breanna's stomach twisted. Her wolf whimpered inside her head, pacing restlessly. "We should tell him. Tell him he's our mate." No, she thought fiercely. Not now. The next 3 days would be agony. 3 long, impossible days in the presence of the man fate had tied her to. She'd have to smile, nod, act like her heart wasn't in her throat every time he looked at her. "Tell him," her wolf urged again. "We found our mate." Breanna clenched her hands together beneath the table. "No," she whispered under her breath. Theo tilted his head slightly, catching the quiet sound but saying nothing. Instead, he turned to her father, his tone shifting to something casual. Too casual. "Your daughter's a dancer, right?" Her head snapped up. Oh no. Her father's expression brightened with pride. "Yes, she is. How did you know?" Theo's lips curved. "I came across her in the woods yesterday. One of her feet stepped into my territory while I was out patrolling." Breanna's heart stopped. Oh goddess, no. No, no, no. Her wolf purred in the back of her mind. I like his voice. Mate has a hot voice. Breanna wanted to vanish. Right there. Turn to mist and disappear. Her father's eyes flickered toward her, his expression turning from pride to restrained disappointment. "I'll make sure she's more aware of what territory she's in, Alpha. I'm so sorry." Theo chuckled, that same deep, rich laugh that made Breanna's insides twist. "It's no problem," he said smoothly. "If she hadn't danced into my territory, I wouldn't have found my mate." Breanna felt her world tilt. Her father blinked, his eyes widening before a slow smile spread across his face. "Really? So my little girl finally found her mate?" "Dad!" she wanted to shout, but her throat was tight, her face burning. Theo nodded, his tone calm but sure. Yes, I know this comes as a bit of a shock. Shock? Her father echoed, laughing. More like relief. I was worried she wouldn't find her mate. Breanna dropped her gaze again, mortified beyond words. Her father beamed between them, clearly overjoyed. Please, I'm happy for you two. But how does this change the current situation? Theo's expression softened, less alpha now, more man. We'll figure it out, one step at a time. The standard in their world was simple. Once a wolf found their mate, they didn't wait. They moved in together, bonded, marked, and mated, all within a few short weeks. It was instinct, biology, and tradition all tangled together. As the two men continued talking, their voices drifted in and out of Breanna's focus. Words like move, transition, and shy floated around her like distant echoes. Her thoughts were already racing ahead. Move in? So soon? Leave home? Leave her brother? Her father? Her dance studio? Breanna, her father's voice cut through her thoughts. Why don't you go pack more of your things? That way you can move in with your mate right away. The words hit her like cold water. Her wolf wagged her metaphorical tail in delight. We get to be with mate! But Breanna barely nodded, unable to find her voice. She rose quietly and retreated upstairs. Her room, once her safe haven, now felt strange. Too small, too filled with the past. She sat on the edge of her bed for a moment, letting the silence press in. Then, taking a steadying breath, she began to pack. Her usual clothes went in first. Leggings, soft dance tops, the simple, comfortable outfits she lived in. Then came skirts and dresses for appearances, a few sweaters, and her essentials. But the most important things were her dance items. Her shoes, her prized collection. Each pair had a story, a memory of movement and emotion etched into them. She carefully wrapped them, placing them neatly in her bag. Then her sketchpad and pencils followed. Dancing was her escape, but drawing helped her breathe. She zipped her bag and looked around her room. At the gray walls, the futon bed, the shelf of worn point shoes, and the faint pencil marks where she'd practiced positions as a little girl. It wasn't grand, but it was hers. And now she was leaving it behind. Her wolf's voice softened. Be happy, Breanna. Mate will make us happy. But Breanna wasn't sure. She carried her luggage downstairs, where her father and little brother James were waiting. James looked confused, his school bag still slung over one shoulder. Bree, where are you going? He asked, his young face creased with worry. She knelt, hugging him tightly. Be a good beta, okay? Be a better one than I would have been. He frowned but nodded slowly, holding on to her just a little longer before letting go. Her father stepped forward, smiling proudly but with softness in his eyes. Goodbye, Breanna. I'll see you soon. Don't get into too much trouble, and for God's sake, get outside once in a while. Breanna managed a small smile and nodded. I will. Theo appeared beside her, his presence filling the room like a steady warmth. Here, he said, gesturing to her suitcase. Let me take that for you. Refusing an alpha was a bad idea. Refusing her alpha felt impossible. She handed the suitcase over, her fingers brushing his for a fraction of a second. A spark flared up her arm, quick and electric. He noticed. His eyes flicked to hers briefly before he turned away and carried the suitcase to his truck, a sleek black Ford Raptor that gleamed under the sunlight. He stowed her luggage carefully in the back, then rounded the vehicle to open the passenger door for her. After you, he said with a teasing bow. She climbed in, her heart still fluttering from the brief touch. The engine came to life with a smooth, powerful purr. She'd always loved that sound, it reminded her of control, of freedom. Her father had taught her enough about cars to know this one was special. As they pulled out of the driveway, she waved back at her family, her brother standing on the porch, her father's hand resting on his shoulder. The road stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt leading into the unknown. The air inside the truck was thick with silence at first. Breanna kept her gaze fixed out the window, the blur of trees and sunlight mixing into soft patterns. Her nerves buzzed through every cell in her body. To steady them, she focused on the radio. A soft melody played, something calm, acoustic. Her mind, ever restless, began choreographing to it, steps forming unbidden in her imagination. Her hands twitched slightly, her feet shifting as if feeling invisible beats beneath them. Then Theo's chuckle broke the quiet. Low, rich, teasing. "So, Breanna," he said. "I never got to properly introduce myself. I'm Theo." She nodded, not trusting her voice at first. "Hello," she whispered finally. He grinned. "You don't talk much, do you?" Her lips twitched into a small smile. "No, I don't. I kind of just want to stay in the shadows." Her voice was soft, but there was honesty in it. Something in his expression softened. Approval, maybe even admiration. "How long have you been a dancer?" he asked. That made her smile for real. "Since I was 4. My mom signed me up for classes. Eventually, I fell in love with it." Theo's gaze lingered on her profile for a moment. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about dancing, the quiet grace in her every movement. It made sense now. "No wonder you're so good," he said, his voice carrying a subtle warmth that made her blush again. "Thank you," she murmured, turning her face toward the window, trying to hide the color creeping up her cheeks. The rest of the drive unfolded in a comfortable silence, filled only by the hum of the engine and the occasional flicker of shared glances. The tension between them had shifted, not gone, but softened, threaded with curiosity. When they finally pulled into the long driveway of the Snow Moon Pack's estate, Breanna's pulse quickened. The pack house was enormous, 3 stories of stone and wood, surrounded by pine trees and rolling fields. It looked both wild and elegant, much like the man beside her. Theo parked and climbed out, circling around to open her door. "Welcome to Snow Moon," he said, his voice steady and proud. The moment her feet hit the ground, the reality of it sank in. This was her new home, her mate's territory. Theo lifted her suitcase from the truck bed effortlessly, then glanced at her dance bag. "I can take that too." Her hand tightened on the strap. "I've got it," she said quietly, her voice soft but firm. His lips curved again, amused by her small defiance. "All right then," he said, motioning for her to follow. He led her through the massive double doors into the heart of the pack house. The space was breathtaking. The kitchen gleamed with state-of-the-art appliances, a granite-topped island lined with sleek bar stools. The scent of coffee lingered faintly in the air. The living room beyond it was warm and inviting, with plush couches, a flat-screen TV, and a wall lined with shelves of DVDs, every genre imaginable. But what truly caught her breath was the library. It stretched across an entire wall, floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books of every kind, their spines catching the light. A tall ladder rested against one end, and the faint scent of old paper and pine filled the air. "Wow," Breanna whispered, awe softening her voice. Theo smiled, watching her reaction. "You like it?" She turned, meeting his gaze for the briefest moment. "It's beautiful." Their eyes held for a heartbeat too long before she quickly looked away, retreating once more into her quiet shell. Theo's smile lingered as he watched her, the shy dancer who had unknowingly danced her way into his territory, into his life, and, if fate had its way, into his heart. Chapter 5. It was strange being in another pack house. Strange in a way that pressed uneasily against Breanna's ribs, making her chest feel tight even as she tried to breathe normally. The walls were different here, The air smelled faintly of pine and amber, and even the silence carried its own rhythm. Even if this was her mate's house, it still felt unfamiliar, and that somehow made it even weirder. Mate. The word itself still felt foreign on her tongue, like something too sacred and too dangerous to say out loud. She still wasn't used to the thought of having a mate at all, let alone one who hadn't rejected her the moment he'd found her. From everything she'd ever heard, being rejected by your mate wasn't just painful, it was the kind of agony that clawed through your soul and left scars you never truly healed from. And even now, a small, trembling part of her still feared that Theo Michaels might yet do exactly that. "Hey, don't be nervous." Theo's voice was smooth, steady, and kind in the way only an alpha's could be, low and grounding, like the sound of steady thunder on the horizon. But those words, "don't be nervous," never worked. Not in books, not in real life, and definitely not in moments like this. If anything, they only made the nerves worse, especially when the girl in question was as shy and reserved as Breanna Mason. Theo stood beside her, a faint smile curving his lips as he walked her down the long, echoing hallway. His home, no, their home, she supposed, was large, beautiful, and filled with the subtle scents of cedar and old wood. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her dress as she followed him, her heartbeat loud in her ears. "The rest of the pack is out doing patrols and such," Theo said casually, as if talking to her about the weather. "They won't be back until later." Breanna nodded quickly, grateful for that small mercy. The idea of meeting an entire pack, his pack, on her first day here made her stomach churn. She was barely managing to hold herself together around him alone. They stopped in front of a wide mahogany door, the dark grain of the wood polished smooth and gleaming in the soft hallway light. Theo turned to her then, and that smile, the one that had already begun to undo her, flashed again. Her insides melted instantly. Her knees almost forgot what standing meant. And in that exact moment, she realized she wanted him to kiss her, wanted it in a way that scared her. Wait, what? Her wolf, Evie, didn't make it easier. "Don't worry," her wolf purred in her head, her tone mischievous and teasing. "I bet his lips are soft and warm." Brianna's eyes widened slightly. "Evie, please," she muttered under her breath, trying not to turn crimson. "Don't put those thoughts in my head right now." Theo opened the door to the room, and the sight inside took her breath away. A king-sized bed with soft gray sheets stood against the far wall, sunlight spilling across it through half-drawn curtains. There was an attached bathroom, a dresser topped with a few framed family photos, and a television on the opposite wall. Everything was neat, clean, and warm. For a moment, Brianna's chest tightened with a wave of homesickness. Her family didn't live in their pack's main house. They'd always lived on the outskirts of the territory, close enough for safety, but far enough for privacy. Her mother's parents used to visit often, before her mother's funeral. She hadn't seen them since. "You can put your stuff in the closet and the dresser," Theo said gently. She followed his gesture and noticed that half of his closet was completely empty, just hangers, space waiting to be filled. He'd saved that half for her. The realization hit her with quiet force. "I'll leave you for a bit to get settled in," he added. Brianna smiled faintly and nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." He gave her one last smile before stepping out, the door closing softly behind him. For a long moment she just stood there, staring at her suitcase resting neatly on the bed. A sigh slipped out of her. "Why," she murmured to herself, "did my mate have to be an alpha?" The thought wasn't bitter, just overwhelmed. Being the mate of an alpha meant expectations, responsibility, and a constant awareness of being watched. Every gesture mattered, every word counted. There was no way she'd be able to unpack without music. That was just impossible. Her earphones were tucked inside her dance bag, and her phone was there too. She unzipped it, slipped the earbuds in, and pressed shuffle. The first few notes of a familiar melody filled her head, and an immediate calm washed through her. As the soft music surrounded her, even the simple act of unpacking felt easier, less like a task and more like a quiet ritual. Meeting her mate had shaken her world to its core, but this was something she could control. Music had always been her anchor. The first song that played was Back to December by Taylor Swift. Her lips curved into a small, wistful smile. As the lyrics wrapped around her, she opened her suitcase and started hanging up her clothes. First came the long-sleeved shirts, nearly all of which were from her favorite dance supply store. Even her leggings came from there, their fabric soft and flexible, the kind that moved like a second skin. Breanna was meticulous when it came to her dancewear. Every piece had its place, color-coordinated and covered carefully. The few leotards she owned were tucked all the way in the back. The thought of Theo ever seeing them made her want to evaporate. Once her dance clothes were perfectly arranged, she moved on to dresses and skirts, then a few hoodies for comfort. Her dance bag, holding her ballet shoes, sketchbook, and other personal items, went carefully onto the top shelf of the closet. Hopefully he doesn't touch that bag, she thought with a half smile. That bag was sacred. The rest of her things went into the dresser drawers: jeans, pajamas, leggings. She realized she owned far more leggings than jeans, which wasn't surprising. Dancing was her life. And then, as she closed the last drawer, the thought struck her like a whisper through her bones. How am I going to deal with being Luna? Her hand lingered on the dresser handle. Being Luna. It felt impossible, almost laughable. She wasn't strong like most Luna-born women. She wasn't loud or commanding. She wasn't even confident half the time. She just danced. That was her strength. But could dancing ever be enough in a world where authority and power defined respect? The walls seemed to echo her worry back to her. Eventually, the stillness grew too heavy to bear. Breanna left the room quietly and started exploring the pack house, her footsteps soft against the hardwood floors. Every corridor she walked through was filled with light, the soft, golden kind that made shadows long and graceful. She could tell the house had been built with care, photographs framed along the hallways, warm rugs softening the floors, and faint scents of herbs drifting through the air. Then something new caught her attention, a scent that made her mouth water and her stomach tighten with sudden hunger. Chicken Alfredo. The aroma was rich and creamy, with the unmistakable scent of homemade garlic bread drifting alongside it. The warmth in the air pulled her forward before she even realized she was moving. Her wolf perked up, tail high in delight. She followed the smell through a wide archway that opened into a kitchen. The light inside was soft, the counters gleaming marble, and a large pot simmered gently on the stove. And standing near the counter, stirring with a wooden spoon, was Theo. Chapter 6. The smell of Alfredo hit Breanna's nose the moment she stepped out of her room. It curled through the hallway like a teasing ribbon, creamy and rich, drawing her toward the kitchen. She blinked in surprise, inhaling again just to be sure. Hell, she didn't even know Alpha Michaels could cook. Who actually did, though? The man was practically a myth around the pack house. From everything she'd heard, he was always buried in meetings, traveling to inter-pack councils, or overseeing border patrols. He didn't seem like someone who had time to step into a kitchen, much less make something that smelled this good. She slowed near the railing that overlooked the main floor, glancing down toward the open-concept kitchen. The lights cast a soft amber glow over the marble counters and gleaming steel appliances. The air was thick with the buttery scent of garlic and herbs, and underneath it, fainter but far more potent, was the pull of her mate's scent. Her pulse quickened immediately. Even over the Alfredo, the warmth of his cedar and smoke aroma clung to the air, unmistakable and intoxicating. Evie stirred inside her. The wolf's excitement rose, tail wagging in the back of Breanna's mind. She always reacted like that when their mate was close. As Breanna neared the kitchen, the other scents grew stronger: melted butter, crushed garlic, pepper, and something faintly sweet. But none of them could compete with him. That scent dominated her senses, thick and magnetic, making Evie spring to full attention. Even before she rounded the corner, Breanna could tell exactly where he stood. There he was, Alpha Theo Michaels, standing by the stove with a wooden spoon in one hand, stirring the creamy sauce in a pan. His shirt hugged him just enough to outline the hard planes of his torso. Muscles shifted beneath the fabric with every movement. Her eyes trailed down instinctively, and she could easily make out the faint ridges of a six-pack through the soft gray material. Evie's voice purred inside her. Mate has pretty eyes. Breanna froze. Of course. Of freaking course. The wolf only ever decided to speak when she was ogling someone. Evie's tone was gleeful. His wolf is really nice. He says Theo is really sweet. Brianna's eyes widened slightly. Since when are you on a first-name basis with our mate? She whispered under her breath. Since he became our mate. Typical. The wolves bonded long before the humans ever got their footing. It was always that strange dance, the primal connection sparking first while the human side tried to catch up. Theo looked up from the stove just then, and his gaze caught hers across the room. His eyes, deep gray like clouds before a thunderstorm, seemed to pierce straight through her. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then, his lips quivered into a soft smile. Breanna, he said, his voice rich and steady. Did you get settled in? The sound of it drew her back to reality. She nodded quickly, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. Shyness came to her like breathing, natural, automatic, impossible to suppress. It was a habit she hated, one she'd have to learn to break if she was ever going to stand beside him as Luna. Theo's gaze softened. Do you need help with anything? She shook her head, forcing herself to meet his eyes. No. Back home I used to make dinner most nights. My dad's a good cook, but… She hesitated, smiling faintly. I like cooking more. My food usually turned out better. He chuckled under his breath, that warm, gravelly sound rumbling in his chest. I've got it, he said, gesturing toward a stool at the kitchen island. Why don't you sit down? Breanna hesitated before obeying, then slipped onto the stool, folding her hands neatly on the counter. The kitchen was alive with quiet music playing from a small speaker near the sink, something soft and wordless, the kind of tune one might dance to alone. The notes drifted gently through the room, and before she realized it, Breanna's mind had wandered. She imagined herself dancing again, like she used to when no one was watching. A soft turn here, a leap there, a delicate pas de bourrée across the imaginary floor. The rhythm of the music carried her somewhere else, away from nervousness and into the calm grace of movement. She was halfway through picturing a calypso step when the sound of a plate setting down snapped her out of it. Theo stood before her now, placing a steaming plate of Alfredo in front of her. Here, he said. She blinked, then offered a polite smile. Thank you, Alpha Michaels. The air shifted. His shoulders tensed ever so slightly at the title. Breanna, he said quietly, almost tenderly. You are my mate. You don't need to call me Alpha. Her cheeks warmed. Of course. How stupid of her. Damn her submissive nature. It kicked in even when she didn't want it to. Sorry, Al. She stopped herself, then corrected. Theo. The name felt foreign on her tongue at first, but as it rolled out, it carried a strange sweetness. It melted against her lips like honey, soft and addictive. Theo's lips curved into a half smile. A small dimple appeared in his right cheek, and something inside her fluttered. He grabbed his own plate and took the seat beside her. The warmth radiating from his body was so tangible she could almost feel it brush against her arm. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the gentle music and the soft clink of cutlery. Then, Breanna took her first bite. The taste exploded in her mouth. The noodles were perfectly al dente, the sauce creamy yet light, seasoned with a careful hand. She closed her eyes, savoring it. This is amazing, Theo, she murmured, genuine surprise in her voice. A flush crept up his neck, coloring his cheeks with faint pink. Thank you, Breanna, he said, ducking his head slightly. That means a lot coming from you." She offered him a small smile, just in time for the door to swing open. A tall brunette with deep green eyes and an outfit showing far too much skin strutted in, hips swaying as if she owned the place. Her perfume hit the air, sharp and sugary. "Babe, I'm here," she announced, her tone dripping with possession. Breanna's smile vanished instantly. The urge to shove her straight through the nearest wall was almost overwhelming. "Who's the girl, babe?" the brunette asked, her gaze landing squarely on Breanna with a smirk. And there it was, the moment she'd been dreading. The inevitable cliché of every alpha mate story. There was always another woman, jealous, territorial, convinced she had a claim. It was like high school all over again, except this time the stakes were higher. "Louise," Theo said flatly, "this is Breanna. She's my mate and the future Luna of the pack." The scoff Louise gave could have curdled milk. She crossed her arms, her painted nails glinting under the kitchen light. Breanna smiled politely, her tone calm but distant. "It's okay," she said softly. "I understand that you were here before me. I'll be gone in a few days, once my duties to my pack are fulfilled." For a second, the room fell completely silent. Both Theo and Louise stared at her, mouths slightly agape. Breanna's words hung between them like fragile glass. Louise had probably expected a fight, claws, maybe even a growl. But Breanna wasn't that kind of woman. She wasn't raised to claw her way through jealousy. Inside, though, Evie's low growl simmered. Louise tilted her head, a sneer twisting her lips. "Well," she said mockingly, "that seems about right, pup." The word pup landed like a slap. Breanna's fingers clenched on the countertop. Every instinct screamed to show her exactly how much of a pup she wasn't. But she forced herself to breathe, to stay composed. She started to stand, ready to take the high road, but a strong hand wrapped around her arm, firm yet careful. Theo's voice cut through the tension like steel. "No," he said. "Breanna, you're the one I want, not Louise." A small, stunned smile flickered across Breanna's lips, but Louise's expression darkened, rage flashing in her eyes. "Babe!" she shrieked. "She isn't even your mate!" Theo rose to his full height then, his power flooding the room. The air thickened, his alpha tone rolled through every syllable like a command from nature itself. "Yes," he growled, eyes darkening. "She is. Now leave, and don't ever come back." The command hit Louise like a physical force. Her body stiffened, eyes wide with submission. Then she turned on her heel and bolted for the door, the sound of her heels echoing down the hall. Silence fell again. Theo turned back to Breanna, and for the first time, there was something like hurt in his eyes. "Why would you let her do that?" he asked quietly. Breanna looked down, her voice soft but steady. "Because she was with you before me," she said. "I don't like taking things from other people." Theo's expression softened completely then. The intensity in his gaze melted into warmth. He stepped closer, and before she could react, his lips brushed hers, light, fleeting, yet charged with everything neither of them had said aloud. For Breanna, it was like finally landing somewhere safe. She had never been kissed before, never really known what it felt like to be wanted this way. The warmth of his breath, the steady thrum of his heart beneath his shirt, it all felt right. He pulled back just enough to whisper, "How can you take something from someone when it's already yours?" And in that moment, with the scent of garlic and cream still in the air, and the echo of music humming in the background, Breanna finally understood what destiny felt like. Quiet, certain, and utterly unstoppable. Chapter 7. The air between them shimmered, alive with a heat neither of them could quite name. When Theo leaned forward, the world stilled. The hum of the house, the wind outside, the faint ticking of the clock. Then his lips brushed hers, and Breanna's thoughts shattered into sparks. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a collision of two halves that had waited too long to meet. Every quiet fear she had ever bottled up, every doubt that whispered she wasn't enough, dissolved in that single moment. Theo's hand moved to her waist, drawing her gently closer. His touch wasn't forceful. It was reverent, steady, as though he were afraid she might vanish if he wasn't careful. She responded with hesitation at first, a tremor of uncertainty, but then something in her heart broke open. She leaned into him. For someone who had spent her life in silence, the connection was overwhelming. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She could feel the warmth of his breath and the certainty in his embrace. In the quiet of that moment, Breanna's wolf stirred within her. "Holy stars! Mate is a good kisser," her wolf squealed in delight, her voice bright and shameless. Breanna nearly laughed through the kiss, trying to contain the sudden burst of emotion. "Not now, Evie," she thought weakly. But her wolf wasn't wrong. Theo's touch carried a kind of steady warmth that made her forget the rest of the world. Theo's arm wrapped protectively around her waist, anchoring her to him, grounding her. Then, in one fluid motion, he turned her so her back rested against his chest. She could feel the rise and fall of his breathing, steady, strong, almost in sync with her own heartbeat. He pressed a soft kiss against her shoulder, tracing a line of warmth up toward her neck. The tenderness in the gesture made Breanna close her eyes, leaning back into him. It wasn't about desire, it was about recognition, the unspoken truth that this was where she belonged. When his lips brushed the curve of her neck, she felt her wolf stir again. That was where his mark would go, the sacred bond between mates that told the world they were one. The thought sent a wave of nerves through her, and Theo must have felt it, because he stopped. He rested his forehead against her temple and whispered softly, his voice a low promise that vibrated through her chest. "I won't mark you, Bree. Not until you're ready. I want you to be comfortable with me first." His words melted her. No alpha she'd ever known had spoken like that, with patience instead of command, gentleness instead of power. He paused, his breath near her ear. "The only thing I ask," he said quietly, "is that you stay close. Sleep beside me tonight. That's all." Her heart fluttered painfully in her chest. The idea scared her, but the sincerity in his tone soothed the panic before it could grow. "Thank you," she whispered. He smiled softly, brushing a thumb across her cheek before stepping back. "I meant what I said, Breanna. I won't do anything you're not ready for." That was the moment she finally looked at him, really looked. Beneath the strength and authority of an alpha, she saw kindness. He didn't see her as weak or as a responsibility. He saw her. "My family and friends call me Bree," she said quietly, her voice trembling but real. Theo's face lit up. "That's a beautiful nickname." He took her hand gently and pressed a kiss against her knuckles. The warmth of his lips lingered, and her cheeks flushed pink. The tension eased between them, not gone, but changed into something softer. Theo's smile turned teasing. "Why don't we go meet the pack? You're here as a duty to your pack, after all, to see if we're worthy allies." Bree nodded, grateful for the change in topic. "Okay. And don't worry," he added with a grin. "I won't introduce you as my Luna. Not yet." A quiet sigh of relief escaped her lips. "Thank you." The late afternoon sun cast golden light over the snow moon pack grounds. Theo's hand rested gently at the small of Bree's back as they walked through the open courtyard. Laughter and chatter floated through the air. Wolves in human form moved about, repairing fences, carrying supplies, greeting one another with warmth that hinted at the strength of their bond. Bree tried to hide behind her calm exterior, but her heart fluttered with nerves. She could feel the stares, curious, assessing, envious. Every step she took beside Theo seemed to draw a dozen sets of eyes. So, Theo began, gesturing to a row of small buildings. That's the orphanage on your left, and just next to it is the cafe. They make the best pastries in the region. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. His tone was casual, but his gaze kept flicking back to her, as if to make sure she was okay. It's really nice here, Bree murmured, taking in the surroundings. Snow Moon territory felt more like a quiet town than a pack compound. Her old home, Silver Smoke, had been deep within the woods, isolated, practical, not this. She was still taking it all in when a tall man approached. He was broad-shouldered, with sandy hair and sharp eyes. "Alpha," he greeted, bowing his head slightly. "When is the representative of the Silver Smoke pack arriving?" Theo's lips twitched in amusement. "She already has," he said, motioning toward Bree. The man blinked, then smiled, extending his hand. "Welcome to Snow Moon. I'm Alex Jefferson, Beta of the pack." Bree shook his hand politely. "Breanna Mason, Beta Mason's daughter from Silver Smoke." Her voice was soft again, barely above a whisper. Theo sighed softly beside her but didn't interrupt. "Good to have you here," Alex said warmly. Then his expression darkened slightly. "Alpha, reports from the south border. Rogues." Theo's jaw tensed. "Don't engage unless they strike first." Alex nodded, but his sharp gaze flicked between them. He noticed the closeness, the way Theo stood just slightly in front of her, his body unconsciously protective. "She's your mate, isn't she?" Theo gave a slow nod. Alex's brow furrowed. "If that gets out, it might complicate the alliance with her pack." "I know," Theo said quietly. "No one needs to know yet." Bree's stomach twisted at the way he said her pack. It was strange. She had never thought of it as something she could lose. But mates changed everything. Alex gave a respectful nod before jogging off, leaving the two of them alone again. By the time night fell, lanterns glowed along the path to the pack house. The stars shimmered above the forest canopy, painting everything in silver-blue light. Bree's exhaustion began to sink in, the day catching up to her. Theo guided her back toward the large wooden structure that now felt impossibly like home. He placed a hand at her waist, his touch gentle. "You should rest," he said softly. "Take a shower if you'd like. I'll wait." She nodded and disappeared into the bathroom. The warmth of the shower helped calm her nerves, washing away the lingering scent of fear and adrenaline. By the time she stepped out, her hair was damp and braided, her thoughts finally steady. When she returned, Theo was sitting on the edge of the bed, his phone glowing faintly in his hand. But his expression wasn't relaxed anymore. It was tight, angry, confused. His voice was low, almost sharp. "Who's Adam?" Bree froze. Her heart sank as she saw the message on the screen. "Where are you? I miss you so much. It's lonely without you." She swallowed hard. "He's my dance partner." Theo's eyes burned with frustration. Not rage, but hurt. "Seems like you're more than just dance partners." Her wolf murmured quietly inside her. "Told you he wouldn't be happy." "Shut up," she whispered under her breath, then stepped forward. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around Theo's neck, forcing him to meet her eyes. "We were supposed to practice today," she said softly. He missed yesterday, so he was trying to reschedule, but it was always temporary. We both knew we'd stop once we found our mates. For a long moment he said nothing. Then some of the tension drained from his face. His breathing slowed. He leaned down and rested his forehead against her shoulder, voice quiet and sincere. "Promise me that's all it is." Bree nodded. "That's all it's ever been." Then, in a moment of uncharacteristic boldness, she reached up, cupped his face, and kissed his cheek. A simple, honest gesture of reassurance. "You're the one I want, Theo. I promise." He looked at her for a long moment before smiling faintly. "Okay," he murmured. "I trust you." Theo picked her up effortlessly and set her down on the bed, then pulled the soft blankets over both of them. The world outside fell away until there was only the warmth between them, the slow rhythm of breathing, and the comfort of knowing they weren't alone. Bree curled against him, her head on his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat beneath her ear. For the first time since she'd arrived, the tension in her body began to fade. Theo's arm draped protectively around her waist as he whispered, "Sleep, Bree. You're safe here." And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. As her eyes drifted shut, her wolf purred softly within her mind. He's ours. Finally, and with that, Breanna Mason, dancer, Beta's daughter, shy girl with too many fears, fell asleep in the arms of the alpha who had promised her patience, trust, and time. Chapter 8. Darkness pressed in from all sides. The air was thick and heavy, almost suffocating, as if the night itself was angry. Then came the voice, harsh, venomous, and so full of hatred that Breanna's heart clenched. "You are the reason I'm dead." The words cracked through the air like a whip. Before she could react, a hard kick slammed into her stomach. Pain radiated outward, stealing her breath. She curled up instinctively, arms around her middle, trying to shield herself from the next blow. When she dared to look up, she saw her mother, or something that looked like her. The same soft brown hair, the same gentle eyes that used to shine with love. Only now they were dark and cruel, filled with resentment. The woman stalked toward her, eyes burning. "If you hadn't been weak, I would be alive. This is all your fault." Her fingers tangled in Breanna's hair, yanking her to her feet. Tears stung Breanna's eyes as her scalp burned, but no sound came out. She couldn't speak, couldn't even breathe. Suddenly, the world around them shifted. The solid ground gave way to creaking wood beneath her feet. Wind howled in her ears. Breanna blinked and realized she was standing on a rope bridge suspended high above a chasm, mist swirling far below. Her mother wasn't alone anymore. Her father and brother stood beside her, faces etched with blame. "It's your fault, Breanna," her father said coldly. His eyes were full of disgust. "I wish you were never born. If not for you, my mate would still be alive." Each word cut through her like shards of glass. Her brother knelt beside her, his once playful face now twisted with bitterness. "It's thanks to you we don't have a mother," he said, his voice low and trembling with anger. Then, with a strength that shocked her, he grabbed her by the wrist and dragged her toward the edge of the bridge. "Please, don't," she gasped, but he wasn't listening. He pushed her onto the other side, forcing her to dangle over the edge. Her hands clutched the ropes, fingers burning as she tried to hold on. Her brother leaned down close, voice icy. "We should have made you an Omega." Then his foot connected with her neck. The impact was so sharp she lost her grip. The last thing she saw before falling into the fog was her family, her mother, father, and brother, all smiling as she plummeted. Her scream echoed endlessly, and then, "Breanna!" A voice pierced through the dream, deep but tender, full of warmth, full of life. Her body jerked violently, shaking as if she were being pulled out of the void. "Breanna, wake up!" Her eyes flew open, and the nightmare shattered like glass. The first thing she saw was Theo's face hovering above hers, his chest bare, skin faintly glistening under the soft morning light. His brown eyes searched hers, worry etched into every line of his expression. Her heart was racing, breaths short and uneven. Theo reached out and lifted her chin gently, his thumb brushing along her jawline until she met his gaze. "What happened?" he asked softly. She blinked, struggling to calm her heartbeat. She'd slept next to him for 2 nights now, and not once had the nightmare come back. Until now. "Just a bad dream," she whispered. Theo didn't look convinced. He propped himself up on one arm, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "Tell me about it," he said, voice calm, steady. "All of it." Breanna hesitated, then let out a slow breath. She told him everything. The rope bridge, the accusations, the fall. The words that had torn through her like blades. When she finished, Theo's brows furrowed. "Why would your mother say it was your fault she died?" Breanna's throat tightened. Her voice was barely audible when she answered. "Because it was." Theo's expression softened instantly, confusion flickering behind his eyes. "A week before she died," Breanna said, staring down at her hands, "we had a day out. Just the 2 of us. She let me pick where we ate. I chose this small cafe near the river. We both got sick that night, really sick. They said it was food poisoning. After a week, I got better." Her voice cracked. She didn't. A tear slipped down her cheek. Theo reached out and brushed it away with his thumb, his touch warm and gentle. "Is that why you became shy?" he asked quietly. "Because of your mother's death?" Breanna nodded. "I thought if I stayed quiet," she said, her voice trembling, "if I just disappeared into the background, they wouldn't see me. They wouldn't make me an omega, or worse. So I stopped talking. For a whole year." She swallowed hard. "When I finally spoke again, I could never go back to how I used to be. The shyness just stayed." Theo's arms came around her, pulling her close against his chest. "I'm so sorry, Breanna," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. She closed her eyes, breathing in the steady rhythm of his heart. "I pushed myself so hard as a dancer during that year," she whispered. "It was the only way I could forget." Theo smiled faintly. "Well," he said softly, "that's better than other ways people try to forget." She smiled against his chest, a small, fragile thing, and reached up to press a kiss to his forehead. "Why don't you get some more sleep?" he said gently. "We have to head to your pack early if we want to get there by 9. She nodded. He was right. Her pack was nearly 2 hours away, and rush hour traffic would be brutal. Breanna turned over, her back to him. Theo's arm came around her waist almost immediately, pulling her close until she could feel the warmth of his body radiating through the blanket. The sound of his heartbeat was steady and comforting. She drifted off quickly after that, this time into a dreamless sleep. When she woke again, it was to the feeling of someone rubbing her shoulders, gentle but firm. "Wake up, love," Theo whispered against her ear. Her lips curled into a sleepy smile. 5 more minutes, she mumbled. He chuckled, the sound low and teasing. "I'll let you sleep until I get out of the shower." He pressed a quick kiss to the back of her head, and she heard the soft sound of his footsteps heading into the bathroom. By the time the shower started running, Breanna had buried herself deeper into the sheets, half asleep, half awake. The warmth around her still smelled like Theo, woodsy, clean, with a faint edge of pine and something that was entirely him. When she finally stirred, the water was still running. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. But when Theo stepped out moments later, all trace of sleep vanished. He was wearing only a towel. Water dripped down his shoulders, tracing the lines of his chest and the ridges of muscle across his abdomen. Breanna's breath caught. Theo noticed, of course he did, and the corner of his mouth curved into a smirk. He crossed the room with the kind of effortless confidence that made her heart thump unevenly. He leaned close, his voice a husky whisper by her ear. "Just remember," he said, "all of this is just for you." Breanna's entire face went red. The bathroom suddenly seemed like the safest place in the world. She practically bolted, shutting the door behind her as she let out a shaky breath. Inside, she turned on the shower, letting the steam fill the room. It took the full length of the shower for her pulse to settle. By the time she was blow-drying her hair, her mind had shifted to something else entirely. Her father. How would he react when he saw her again? Would he still look at her like she was the reason her mother was gone? Or would he see that she'd grown stronger? Breanna stared at her reflection in the mirror. She didn't wear much makeup, just a bit of blush, some eyeliner and mascara, and a soft pink lipstick. Enough to look awake, not enough to look like she was trying. Her outfit was simple but neat. Dark blue skinny jeans, a clean white top, and black flats. When she stepped out of the bathroom, Theo was waiting by the door. His eyes ran over her once, slowly, before he smiled. "You look lovely," he said simply, and meant it. "We need to get going now," Breanna nodded, grabbing her bag. She had been at Theo's pack for 3 days now, and true to his word, he hadn't pushed her. Her virtue remained untouched, her skin unmarked. He had kept every promise he'd made. Theo opened the car door for her, helping her into the passenger seat like a gentleman. She settled in, glancing once more at the pack house that had started to feel almost safe. Then he rounded the car, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. As they pulled away, the early morning sun broke through the trees, scattering light across the road ahead. Breanna leaned her head against the window, watching the forest blur past. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel entirely alone. Chapter 9. The drive was quiet but comfortable. Morning light filtered through the windshield, painting soft golden patterns across the dashboard. Theo's hand rested loosely on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Breanna sat beside him, the hum of the engine and faint rustle of passing trees doing little to calm the fluttering in her chest. They were heading to her home, the Silver Smoke Pack territory, and though she tried to seem calm, her heart thudded faster with every passing mile. She hadn't seen her father in weeks, and she wasn't sure what would await her this time. Theo's voice broke the silence. "You're quiet again," he said, glancing her way with a teasing smile. "You thinking about what your father might say?" Breanna gave a faint smile, her fingers twisting the edge of her sweater. "He's a little overprotective." Theo chuckled, low and soft. "That's all right. I can handle protective fathers." She turned to him then, raising an eyebrow. "You say that now. Wait until he starts asking questions." He smirked, but didn't reply. His confidence was unwavering. Something about him always was. They pulled into her driveway 30 minutes earlier than planned. The familiar sight of the Silver Smoke Pack house came into view, a large, rustic structure surrounded by pine trees, its wooden porch wrapped in ivy. Theo parked neatly beside the stone path and turned off the engine. "Looks like we got here first," he said, stepping out. Before she could even touch the handle, Theo circled the car and opened her door, extending his hand. "M'lady," he said playfully. Breanna rolled her eyes, but the corner of her mouth twitched. She placed her hand in his, feeling the warmth of his skin as he helped her out. "Thank you," she murmured. The gravel crunched beneath their shoes as they made their way up the long driveway. Birds chirped faintly in the trees. The morning air smelled faintly of dew and earth. It could have been peaceful until the front door opened. Her brother, James, stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing his usual school uniform slightly undone, with his tie hanging loose and hair tousled like he'd been in trouble again. Theo's eyes narrowed slightly. Breanna's stomach dropped. James smirked the moment he saw her. "Shouldn't you be at school already?" she asked, folding her arms. He shrugged, smirking wider. "Shouldn't you be marked and screwing your mate?" The words hit her like a slap. Theo's low chuckle rumbled beside her, deep, amused, and unmistakably dominant. Breanna's face turned crimson. "James!" she hissed. He only grinned. "Dad's waiting inside." But before he left, he stopped beside her and pulled her into a quick hug. For all his teasing, his embrace was warm. "How long are you staying?" he asked quietly. Breanna hesitated. I don't know. Depends on how long everything takes. James nodded, then turned to Theo. His expression hardened, voice lowering. Don't hurt my sister, or you'll have hell to pay. Breanna blinked. She had never heard her brother threaten anyone before, certainly not an alpha. Theo's lips curved slightly, but there was respect in his tone when he replied. Duly noted. James gave a curt nod, slung his backpack over his shoulder, and walked off down the drive. Theo's gaze lingered on him for a moment. I like him, he said quietly. Breanna sighed. You won't when he starts testing your patience. As they stepped into the house, a wave of familiarity washed over her. The faint scent of oak wood, the distant hum of conversation from the kitchen, the warmth that used to make this place feel like home. Then came the sound of footsteps, heavy, confident, familiar. Her father appeared from the hallway, wearing his usual flannel and jeans, gray just beginning to streak his dark hair. His eyes softened the moment they landed on her. Breanna? Hi, Dad. She barely finished the words before he wrapped her in a hug. His arms were strong, comforting. For a moment, she felt small again, safe. Then, true to form, he pulled back and sniffed the air near her shoulder. I don't smell him on you. Breanna's jaw dropped. Dad! Theo's brows lifted in amusement. I'm home for 5 minutes and that's the first thing you ask? She protested, crossing her arms. He shrugged unapologetically. Just checking. You know how fast these things go. She sighed. We're taking it slow. Her father blinked, genuinely surprised. Taking it slow? That's new. Better than having a grandchild before my little girl turns 20, he added, smirking. Breanna gave him a deadpan look. You had me at 18. Theo chuckled quietly behind her, earning himself a sharp glare from both of them. Before she could say anything else, the sound of the front door opening interrupted them. The rest of the pack council began to file in, alphas, betas, and lieutenants from nearby allied packs. The atmosphere quickly shifted from homey to formal. Within minutes, everyone was seated around the long oak table in the meeting room. 15 minutes into the discussions, the door burst open again. James stood there, slightly out of breath, his school uniform wrinkled. Sorry, he said quickly. Explosion at school. Totally not caused by me and Alex in science. The room went silent. Theo raised an eyebrow. Breanna groaned. James. In other words, her father muttered, you caused it. James grinned sheepishly. Maybe. Sit, his father ordered with a sigh. James dropped into a seat, trying to look innocent. Then, as if on cue, every pair of eyes turned toward Breanna. So, Beta Mason, one of the alphas began, you've spent the last 3 days observing the Snow Moon pack. What did you find? Breanna straightened in her seat. The pack is just like any other, she began. They're organized, they take care of their orphans, they go to school, work, and train regularly. The community is structured and disciplined. Her voice grew more confident as she went on. I spent time with the pack members, visited their territory, and observed their routines. The rumors about their aggression, their instability, they're false. They're stable, peaceful, and strong. Theo sat beside her, his hand resting casually but possessively over hers beneath the table. Her father sat on her other side, watching the interaction with sharp eyes. When the room quieted, one of the older alphas leaned forward. So based on your observations, there's nothing to worry about if we form an alliance with the Snow Moon Pack? Breanna met his gaze and nodded. That's exactly what I'm saying. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Papers were passed around. Pens scratched signatures across parchment. Within an hour, it was done. The alliance sealed and official. Theo rose slightly, offering a small bow. Thank you for meeting with us, Alpha Michaels, he said with the charisma that seemed to come naturally to him. Her father nodded. The honor's ours, Alpha Theo. Theo's lips curved into a charming smile. And thank you, he added, eyes flicking to Breanna, "for sending such a beautiful woman to my pack as an envoy. I must say, she's one of the best your pack has to offer." The words hit like a spark to her skin. Heat flooded her face, her heart racing. She could feel every gaze in the room on her. Theo didn't stop there. He lifted her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles, slowly, deliberately, and looked up at her with a wink that made her want to disappear beneath the table. Her father caught it, of course. When she glanced his way, he was barely suppressing a smirk. "Well," he said finally, clearing his throat, "now that we have that settled, let's move on." As the next discussion began, Breanna tried to focus, but her thoughts drifted. Her mind wandered back to dance, to her studio, to music, to movement. It was her way of escaping the chaos, of grounding herself. Then, mid-meeting, a voice pulled her back. "Alpha Jacobson," her father said, "has your son found his mate yet?" For some reason, the question made Breanna's head snap up. Jacobson sighed. "No, but he's chosen someone to take as a wife. It's become less about finding a mate and more about continuing the alpha bloodline." Breanna's brows furrowed. That didn't surprise her. Alphas who never found their mates often chose suitable partners to ensure their legacy. Her father nodded thoughtfully. "And who has he chosen?" There was a pause, a long, weighted pause. Then a familiar voice spoke from across the table. "I picked Breanna Mason," said Adam Jacobson. The room froze. The world seemed to still around her. Breanna's breath caught in her throat, her pulse drumming in her ears. Theo's hand, which had been resting gently on hers, tightened, ever so slightly, but with unmistakable possession. The air in the room grew thick, almost electric. Her father blinked, shock etched on his face. James's chair scraped the floor as he stood, fists clenched. Theo, however, didn't move. He only looked at Adam, his brown eyes calm, unreadable. But beneath that calm, there was a tension that made the air hum with danger. Breanna's gaze darted between the two alphas, the one who had claimed her as his mate and the one who had just declared her as his intended bride. The silence that followed was deafening, and in that moment Breanna realized this meeting, this alliance, this morning had only just begun to unravel everything she thought she knew about loyalty, love, and fate. Chapter 10. The room fell utterly silent. Breanna's heart pounded against her ribs, and for a fleeting moment she thought maybe she had misheard. Maybe she had imagined Adam's words, the way his voice, deep and certain, had carried across the long table filled with alphas and betas. But no. The stunned faces around her, the widening of Theo's eyes, the subtle twitch in her father's jaw. It was all too real. "Wait, what?" The words slipped out of her before she could stop them, her voice breaking the suffocating silence that had settled over the meeting room. First of all, why me? There were like 45 other girls better suited for someone like Adam Jacobson, beautiful, confident, unmoving under pressure. Second, what the actual hell? All they had ever done was dance together. Dance! Sure, they'd spent countless hours practicing in the mirrored studio, their hands brushing, their eyes meeting in those fleeting rhythm-bound moments, but it had never meant anything beyond the stage. Had it? Her thoughts tangled as Theo's energy shifted beside her. The calm, cool, composed Alpha Michaels, the man who rarely let emotion show, was radiating fury. Breanna could feel the anger vibrating off him, raw and primal. The muscles in his forearm tightened beneath her fingers as she reached out, instinctively rubbing slow circles on his hand, trying to calm the storm building inside him. "Theo," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. His eyes snapped to hers, still human brown, but barely. There was a shadow there, something lupine just beneath the surface. She could tell his wolf was dangerously close to breaking through. Breanna turned back to Adam, her cheeks flushed and her stomach twisting into knots. "Why me?" she asked softly, her voice so uncertain it almost didn't sound like her own. "I'm nothing special." Her father's brow shot up in surprise. He wasn't used to hearing her speak at all during pack meetings, let alone question an alpha's son. Adam, however, didn't flinch. He met her gaze squarely, his eyes filled with something strange. Admiration? Longing? "It's because you're beautiful," Adam said plainly, his voice carrying an emotional weight that made the room feel smaller. "Smart. Strong. You may not see it, but when we dance together, it's magical. When I hold you, when my hands are on you, it feels right, even if we aren't mates." Theo's low growl rumbled like thunder across the table. Adam didn't stop. "Every night, I think about what it would be like to wake up next to you, to have a family, to build something real, even if fate didn't write it in the stars." The words hung in the air like poison. Breanna opened her mouth to protest. She didn't want this, didn't ask for this. But before she could utter a sound, Theo's chair scraped violently against the floor. In a flash, he was on his feet. 1 second, Adam was standing across the table, still mid-sentence. The next, Theo had crossed the room with preternatural speed, grabbing Adam by his shirt and slamming him into the wall. The sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Gasps erupted from the alphas and betas. Papers scattered to the floor. Theo's fingers fisted tightly in Adam's collar, pinning him up with terrifying strength. "Don't you ever talk about her like that again." His voice came out half human, half growl, his wolf bleeding through every syllable. His jaw was clenched, his canines dangerously visible. "Mate 1," came a faint whisper from somewhere behind Breanna's spinning thoughts. "Asshole 0." Evie's voice in her head, her wolf, snarled approvingly. "Theo!" Breanna gasped, scrambling from her seat. "Stop, please." Theo didn't move. His muscles flexed as he cocked his arm back and threw a punch. The crack of impact made Breanna flinch. Adam's head snapped sideways, blood trickling down from his lip. Theo didn't stop there. He landed another blow, and another, each fueled by possessive rage. Breanna rushed forward, slipping between the shocked onlookers until she reached him. She pressed her palm against his arm, solid, warm, shaking with fury. The muscle beneath her hand was hard as stone. "Theo, stop," she whispered urgently, her voice trembling. "Please, calm down." He didn't move. His breathing was ragged. "Please, love," she murmured, the endearment slipping out before she could think. He didn't know. Theo froze. His head turned slightly toward her, his chest still rising and falling sharply. "Love, look at me." Her tone softened, her hand sliding up his arm until her fingers brushed his cheek. The heat of his skin burned under her touch, but he finally turned to meet her gaze. His wolf receded just enough for the golden haze in his eyes to dim. "Let him go," she whispered again, her thumb tracing his jaw. For a moment, the air seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, Theo released Adam, his chest heaving, his shoulders slumping as if he'd been fighting more than just a man. The room exhaled collectively. Breanna guided Theo back toward their seats. Her heart was still pounding, her palms slick with sweat. Adam wiped the blood from his mouth, eyes wide but strangely understanding. Her father's voice broke the silence. "You see," he said, the deep authority of an alpha filling the room again. "My daughter can't accept your offer. She's already found her mate, in Alpha Michaels." That settled it. No one dared argue. Adam nodded slowly, wincing as he dabbed at his nose. "I didn't know," he muttered. "I'm sorry." Breanna sat back beside Theo, torn between anger and something else, something primal and warm. She hated that Theo had lost control like that, but the way he defended her, the raw, possessive edge, had ignited something deep in her chest. "He's mine," her wolf purred, and he made sure everyone knows it. When the meeting finally adjourned, the other alphas filed out with murmurs of shock and curiosity. Her father lingered behind, arms crossed. You could have told us sooner, he said, eyes shifting between Theo and Breanna. I didn't want her judgment questioned, he continued. Had I mentioned she found her mate, some might have accused her of bias. Alpha Jacobson gave a curt nod. Understood. Still, next time, transparency would be appreciated. Yes, Alpha, Breanna said softly, bowing her head. When it was finally just the four of them, her father, James, Theo, and herself, the tension eased a little. James gave her a crooked smile and nudged her shoulder. You really know how to make a meeting interesting, sis. Breanna rolled her eyes. Not my fault. Theo's hand found hers, grounding her again. She hugged her father and brother before they left, feeling that strange mixture of pride and exhaustion settle in. Once they were back in Theo's car, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy with things unspoken. Halfway down the highway, Theo's voice broke through the hum of the tires. I'm sorry for what I did back there, he said quietly. His hand reached for hers again, warm and steady this time. When someone tried to take you from me, something inside me snapped. I couldn't stand it. Breanna looked at him, his profile lit by the afternoon sun. It's all right, she said softly. I understand. You were just being you. He gave her a small smile, but the guilt didn't fully leave his eyes. I had no idea Adam wanted that, she continued. We were just friends, dance partners. I believe you, Theo said, his thumb brushing the back of her hand. The rest of the drive passed in silence, a soft, lingering kind that spoke of connection more than words ever could. Their fingers stayed intertwined, a quiet promise between them. She watched the world blur past, the forest edges, the glint of sunlight over the hood, the sky stretched wide and calm. For a fleeting second, she thought about how strange fate could be, how one day she was a shy girl hiding from her pack's gaze, and now she was here, mated to an alpha, sitting beside him, their hands speaking more than their voices could. Then something caught her eye, a glint of silver, a movement too fast to process. Her head turned just as her stomach dropped. A car, black, sleek, and speeding out of control, was barreling straight toward them from the opposite lane. Theo, be careful! She never finished. The impact came like an explosion, a deafening crash. Glass shattered, metal twisted, the world flipped sideways. Pain seared through her body, sharp and blinding, as her head slammed against the window. Her seatbelt bit into her chest. The last thing she heard before everything went dark was Theo's voice, frantic, broken, screaming her name. Breanna! Then, nothing. Only silence and the faint taste of iron on her tongue. And outside, somewhere in the wreckage of shattered steel and smoke, the bond between two souls pulsed faintly, unbroken, but hanging by a thread. Chapter 11. The ballet studio shimmered into focus like a memory painted in sunlight and soft dust. It was exactly as Breanna remembered. Wooden floors gleaming from countless hours of polishing, the faint smell of rosin and sweat lingering in the air, and mirrors stretching endlessly across the walls, reflecting an infinity of versions of herself. She stood in the center, poised and elegant, the air still around her as if the room itself was holding its breath. Her leotard hugged her form snugly but comfortably, the blush pink fabric catching the studio light. The pale tutu, light as a whisper, flared gently around her hips as she adjusted her posture. Her white tights and brand new point shoes completed the ensemble, perfectly familiar yet hauntingly dreamlike. She looked down at her shoes, flexing her ankles and feeling the resistance of the stiff satin beneath her toes. That ache, that sweet, satisfying ache of breaking in new point shoes made her smile. She ran her fingers along the ribbon laces, tying them neatly before straightening. Her reflection smiled back at her, though something in her eyes seemed distant, faded. Because deep down, she knew none of it was real. The studio was only in her head, The world outside these mirrored walls, the pain, the crash, Theo's voice, belonged to the reality she was locked away from. Here, she was adrift in a quiet, endless limbo. Still, she could hear him. Theo's voice reached her every day, threading through the silence like a lifeline. Sometimes it was faint, sometimes clear, but always steady. "Breanna," he'd whisper, as though his words might bridge the divide between them. "I love you. Please, wake up." She'd yell back, her voice echoing in the endless expanse of her mind. "I'm trying," she'd cry out, though she knew he couldn't hear her. And then, one day, his voice came again, tender, fragile, trembling with the kind of love that survived through pain. "You know," Theo said softly, his tone laced with exhaustion and hope, "I heard this song the other day. The very first thing that came to mind was you." Breanna's heart fluttered. "That's sweet," she thought, smiling faintly to herself as she stretched her arms above her head. "What song, though?" "See, I'd bet my pack that even in your coma, you're choreographing something," Theo continued with a broken laugh. "When you wake up, you'll have new dances. I know it." A tear slipped down her cheek. He believed she'd come back, even when she wasn't sure herself. And then, like a whisper carried by the wind, she heard it. Soft music trickling through the air, wrapping around her like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She froze. She'd been trapped in this empty studio for what felt like weeks, maybe months. Time was strange here, but she had never once heard music. Until now. A delicate guitar began to strum, a tender voice weaving through the air. "Come on, skinny love, just last the year. Pour a little salt, we were never here." Her breath hitched. Her body reacted before her mind caught up. Her arms lifted, graceful and slow, swaying with the rhythm. Each movement flowed naturally, soft, deliberate, as if the melody were a current carrying her forward. She rose up on her toes, into releve, spinning in a small turn without dropping her heels. The satin of her point shoes whispered against the floor as she moved, her reflection spinning endlessly around her. My. Staring at the sink of blood and crushed veneer, the melancholy in the lyrics struck something deep within her. It wasn't just a song, it was a memory. She glided across the floor, doing a series of delicate bérets that felt like floating. Her arms traced invisible ribbons through the air, each gesture filled with longing. She rose into fifth position, one leg sweeping up into a low passe before extending out beside her, hip height, her balance unwavering. Twice she repeated the motion, each time more fluid, more certain. On the second repetition, she turned her body gracefully to the side, her legs still extended, her eyes closing as she felt the music guide her. I tell my love to wreck it all. Cut out all the ropes and let me fall. Her heart swelled. She bent low, her fingertips brushing the floor as her leg arched high behind her. Rising from the stretch, she twirled in a half pirouette, her tutu catching the air like petals in motion. She sashayed across the floor, the rhythm building inside her. The dance became instinctive. Her body, every muscle, every breath, moved with a purpose her conscious mind couldn't define. I told you to be patient. I told you to be fine. I told you to be balanced. I told you to be kind. The chorus rose like a heartbeat. Breanna leapt, weightless, her body suspended midair before landing with perfect poise. Her arms curved above her head, her fingers trembling slightly as the emotion in the music deepened. She spun into a quick peak turn, then jumped again, her skirt flaring like a rose in bloom. She could see Theo in her mind, his hands gripping hers at the hospital bedside, his lips whispering words she couldn't answer. The thought carried her higher. She slid gracefully across the floor, preparing for a chain of fouettes. Each spin blurred her reflection in the mirror, the world spinning with her until there was nothing left but motion and music. In the morning I'll be with you, but it will be a different kind. Her right foot pointed high as her left leg kicked upward, her body arching in perfect alignment. A pirouette followed, then another, each one sharper, more passionate. When she finally stopped, her heart was racing, not from exhaustion, but exhilaration. She could feel him. The connection between them pulsed through the fog of her dream, faint but real. Theo's love anchored her even here, in this fragile illusion. As the final verse echoed, she fell into slower movements, groundwork that felt intimate and raw. Her arms curved in sweeping arcs, her fingers trembling as she bent forward, forehead brushing her outstretched leg. Who will love you? Who will fight? Who will fall far behind? The question lingered in her mind as she rolled backward, then lifted herself to standing, each motion fluid and desperate. Her body rose onto point once more, her leg extended behind her in a final, breathtaking arabesque. The song's last note faded, leaving her suspended in silence, her breath shallow, her heart full. For the first time in weeks, she felt alive. She stood in her final pose, chest heaving, a tear slipping down her cheek. The music faded completely, and the light in the studio dimmed. The walls began to blur. Darkness crept in, soft and heavy. And then she heard it. Theo's voice, raw, broken, trembling with grief. "She still hasn't woken up," a stranger said, their voice clinical, detached. "There are no signs she ever will. I'm sorry, Alpha." Theo's snarl cut through the air, laced with fury and pain. "I'll kill them. I'll kill those hunters for hurting her." Hunters. The word echoed in her mind, jagged and cold. So it was them. The ones who'd rammed into their car. Breanna felt pressure on her hand, warm, trembling fingers clasping hers. She could feel him, her Theo. She tried to move, to reach out, to let him know she was there. But her body refused. It was like trying to lift a mountain with her mind. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed as she fought against the invisible weight. Her spirit strained against the darkness. Finally, her finger twitched. Then her hand squeezed, weakly, but enough. "Theo?" His voice cracked, filled with disbelief. "Bree?" Her heart leapt. "Bree, squeeze my hand if you can hear me." It took less effort this time. Her fingers curled faintly around his. Theo let out a choked laugh that turned into a sob. She could feel the tears dripping onto her hand, his thumb brushing over her skin. "I'm going to dim the lights," he whispered, his voice shaking with tenderness. "So when you open your eyes, it's not too bright, okay?" She wanted to tell him she heard him, that she was trying, but all she could do was listen. Time stretched. Seconds felt like eternities, and then, finally, after so many weeks in the dark, her eyelids began to flutter. The world behind them brightened, just a little. The hum of machines grew louder. The scent of antiseptic filled her lungs. Her body felt heavy, anchored by wires and tubes, but warmth surrounded her, Theo's warmth. With one final push of will, she forced her eyes open. Light flooded in, soft, golden, gentle. The first thing she saw was his face, Theo, sitting beside her hospital bed, his brown eyes red from crying, his lips trembling with disbelief. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then his hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin as if afraid she might vanish. "Breanna," he breathed, voice cracking. "You came back to me." She tried to speak, but only a broken whisper escaped her lips. "Theo." And for the first time since the crash, she felt the world spin again, not in confusion or pain, but in life. The world outside her mind began to awaken with her, the monitors beeped steadily. Nurses hurried into the room, but none of it mattered. Because Theo's tears were warm on her skin, his heartbeat thundered against her hand. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Breanna Mason smiled. She had danced her way back to him. To be continued. Stay tuned and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.